My sister fired me from my job, but she didn't know that it legally belonged to me. My name is Corwin Danner. I wasn't the kind of person who made waves. For most of my adult life, I worked behind the scenes at Danner and Brightwell, our family's boutique hotel company. Not glamorous, but stable. Honest work. For 15 years, I ran operations, supply chains, staff management, compliance, renovations, vendor relationships, and all the 100 daily fires that pop up when you manage 8 mid-size properties across New England. My sister, Eloise, was the face of the company. She wore the smile for the press, delivered keynote speeches at hospitality conferences, signed deals with designers and developers. She had that spark, ambitious, magnetic, commanding attention. But I kept the place running. And that's what made the morning she fired me feel like a clean, quiet cut. I stood across from her desk. Her office used to be our father's, high ceiling, big window view of the harbor, everything framed in glass and brushed steel. She leaned back, arms folded, eyes unreadable. "It's time for change, Corwin," she said calmly. "The board supports this." "The board," I said. I already knew who that meant. Eloise, our father, and 2 of her classmates from business school she'd installed last quarter. One of them once asked me what P&L meant. "You've been instrumental," she added, "but we need a new approach to scale." "And this is it? Removing me?" "You'll receive a 6-month severance," she replied, almost kindly. "Human Resources has the package ready. We'll bring in an outside operations consultant. Someone from Turn & Wells." That caught me off guard. Turn & Wells was a global chain, 10 times our size. "You think they'll understand who we are?" "They'll bring efficiency." I opened my desk drawer and placed 2 picture frames into a box. One held a photo of me and Dad, 30 years ago, standing in front of the first Danner property in Kittery, Maine, a small inn he refurbished on nights and weekends while working as a postmaster. Eloise didn't look at the photo. She was adjusting her jacket sleeve. "This isn't personal," she said. "It's always personal," I answered quietly. "You just prefer it not to look that way." I picked up the box, walked out of the building I'd helped build floor by floor, and drove home through downtown Portsmouth without looking back. But what Eloise didn't know was that I wasn't walking away empty-handed. 5 years ago, Dad gave me a piece of advice that changed everything. We'd been having lunch, his treat, always, at a little seafood place near the marina. He'd just gotten back from Vermont, where he was overseeing a new property build. "You're good at what you do, Corwin," he said. "But don't get too attached to the buildings. You built them." I did. But they're not the foundation. "What is, then?" He leaned in. "Land. The land is what lasts. You own the dirt, the rest is negotiable." At first, I didn't understand. Then I saw the opportunities. Several of our best performing properties, Kittery, Brattleboro, and Merrimack, were sitting on land we leased. Old agreements signed decades ago, now nearing expiration. The landowners were aging. Their kids? Different mindset. I ran the numbers. If someone buys the land and increases rates, I said to Dad a month later, our margins vanish. He nodded. "I've thought about it." "What if I buy it?" "Personally." Quietly. He gave me a long look. "You'd need to risk most of your savings." "I've been saving," I said. "I believe in this business. In what we built." So, with his blessing and my own cash, I purchased the land under our 3 flagship properties, quietly forming C&D Holdings to manage the assets. The company, my company, then leased the land back to Danner and Brightwell at favorable 5-year terms. I wasn't trying to make a profit then. I was protecting the future. Now, 5 years later, those leases were about to expire. And Eloise had no idea she was renting from me. I didn't start planning revenge that day. It didn't feel like revenge at the time. But as I sat on my porch the morning after I was fired, watching gulls glide over the harbor and sipping coffee I had no reason to make at 5:45 a.m., I realized something had changed. I had leverage. The first call came from Jonah, our head of maintenance at the Merrimack property. "You heard about the lighting contracts?" he asked. "No." "They're canceling the upgrade we planned. The new consultant says we're over-engineering. Wants to go with a bulk supplier. They're installing cheaper lighting? Cheaper everything. Staff hours are being reduced, too. No overtime, no early shift overlap." I stayed silent. I trained Jonah myself when he started as a junior tech. He knew what it meant when the numbers man took over. "Place isn't running right," he said after a pause. "Not without you." I thanked him but didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. I already knew what was happening. A week later, I got an email from Nadia, the front desk supervisor in Brattleboro. She'd found me through my personal address, not the company one. Eloise had likely blocked that. Guests are noticing the changes. They keep asking if we're under new ownership. Morale's dropping fast. I thought you should know. I stared at the message for a long time. No reply. Not yet. That same afternoon, my lawyer Patricia called. Corwin, she said, you'll want to see this. The company is trying to renegotiate the property insurance on your 3 parcels. Under the assumption they own the land? Correct. They don't. I know. And now they do too. She forwarded the email. It was a routine request from a risk assessment officer at the insurance firm, asking for documentation clarifying ownership. We waited. 2 days later, my father called. She just found out, he said. Clarice? No, he said with a sigh. Eloise. She's furious. Says you hid ownership from the company. Did I? No. Then why's she surprised? You listed the ownership under C&D Holdings. I had to separate personal investment from the company. Everything's in the legal documents. She never read them. I know. He paused, then added, she's called a board meeting. I'm not on the board. You might want to be. I didn't say yes or no. But I did go to the city archives the next day, just to confirm everything was clean: deeds, zoning approvals, lease agreements. All intact. What I didn't expect was what I found under her name, well, her married name. Eloise M. Calder. She'd filed development permits in 3 towns, Brattleboro, Kittery, and Merrimack. All within walking distance of our top properties. All under a company name I didn't recognize, E&M Horizon Partners. I went home, called Patricia, and said 3 words. Dig into Horizon. The results came back fast. It wasn't just a shell company. It was a fully planned hospitality venture, luxury-focused, upscale eco-retreats for the new generation of travelers. Investors were listed. Capital was already being moved. And most alarmingly, locations, branding tone, and client targeting bore a striking resemblance to Danner and Brightwell's profile. The decks referenced leveraging local knowledge and repurposing legacy markets for modern travelers. It was all too familiar. The pieces clicked into place. Eloise wasn't cutting costs because she believed in efficiency. She was bleeding the company so it would shed its best assets. The plan was simple: make the properties seem unprofitable, get board approval to sell, and buy them through her new venture at reduced prices. I wasn't just expendable. I was an obstacle. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Vincent, one of Eloise's old classmates and a board member. I need to ask something off the record, he said. You're still involved with the land under the Merrimack, right? I own it. Thought so. A pause. We're being pitched an offer to divest 3 properties. Low performance, high overhead. You can guess which. Kittery. Brattleboro. Merrimack. Exactly. And the buyer? No name given. But you have a suspicion. Yes, he admitted. She says you've stepped away voluntarily. Is that true? No, I said. I was pushed out. So she could do this without interference. Another pause. Then he added, you should come to the next meeting. No need, I said. But I'll make sure you have what you need to see the full picture. And I would. But first, I had a meeting to schedule in New York City. I met Martin Leclerc in a sun-drenched corner office in Midtown. The headquarters of Wexford Hospitality Group felt like another planet compared to the understated functionality of the Danner and Brightwell offices. Martin was brisk and practical. He appreciated clean deals, clear terms, and strong fundamentals. I liked that about him. You've been busy, he said after I handed him the proposal folder. I've been preparing. He opened it. Inside were property details, performance histories, staffing numbers, customer satisfaction metrics, everything a buyer would need to understand what they were getting. More importantly, I included the land lease agreements. Wexford wouldn't just be buying buildings. They'd be leasing from me. You're offering us your sister's hotels? They're still my family's hotels. For now. But she's preparing to offload them. Her board just needs a reason. He glanced up. And you're giving them one? I'm giving them an alternative. Martin leaned back. You know, I looked at acquiring Danner and Brightwell 5 years ago. You turned me down. I believed in the company then. I still do. I just don't believe in who's running it. He studied me. And what happens to the staff? You keep them. They're the reason those properties perform. I would expect nothing less. I stood. You'll get a call. From someone on the board. They'll act like they're just gauging interest. Be ready. I always am. Back in New Hampshire, things were shifting fast. A hospitality news site published a leak about Wexford's interest in acquiring regional properties. Speculation pointed directly at Danner and Brightwell's top-performing hotels. The rumors were carefully planted. The headline read, "Wexford eyes Northern Retreats in surprise expansion bid." The internal response was immediate. Eloise issued a statement to the company. There are no current plans to sell any properties. Our performance remains strong, and our leadership is confident in our direction. A day later, I received a formal letter from the board excluding Eloise, requesting a meeting. Patricia helped me prepare. We reviewed contracts, cross-checked financials, rehearsed key points. There could be no holes. When I arrived at headquarters, the air was electric. Not hostile, but charged with uncertainty. I hadn't set foot in that building since the day I was dismissed. The board meeting was held in the same glass conference room Eloise used to host her PR sessions. She was already there, sitting at the head of the table, arms crossed. Our father was beside her, looking tired but composed. Vincent sat across from them, flanked by two neutral board members. I took the empty seat at the far end. This meeting was called to discuss recent developments, Vincent began, directing his words carefully. Eloise, would you like to begin? She didn't hesitate. My brother has been working to undermine this company. He's coordinating with outside investors to force a sale of assets he knows we rely on. Undermine? I said. I offered favorable lease terms for 5 years. I protected this company from risk you weren't even aware of. You didn't disclose your ownership. I did. It was in the corporate records. You didn't read them. She looked ready to speak, but I continued. I didn't hide anything. I invested in the land to protect our future. And I have the paperwork to prove it. Patricia handed folders around the table, copies of deeds, lease terms, the original board disclosures. And what about this? I held up another packet. A competing company, E&M Horizon, registered to your married name. 3 hotel projects, all positioned to target our strongest markets. That's a private consultancy. With development permits, investor decks, and a business plan that mirrors this company's positioning. Eloise froze. Not visibly. But I saw the tightening of her jaw. The stillness. It was all the admission we needed. Our father's expression collapsed. You built a separate company, he said slowly. Using our data. Our resources. She didn't respond. Vincent looked toward the rest of the board. There's a motion on the table from Wexford Hospitality to purchase the Kittery, Brattleboro, and Merrimack properties. The offer is above market. All staff retained. Full transparency. Another member spoke. And we now know Eloise's venture intended to acquire those same buildings at lower prices. The vote was swift. Unanimous, except for one. Eloise abstained. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just looked down at the same conference table I'd once polished with a cloth before meetings started. I was a custodian once. Now I was the architect of its future. When the meeting ended, Vincent walked me out. She'll be asked to step down. I figured. You're not interested in taking over? No. I've got other work to do. Update. A year passed. The properties changed hands smoothly. Wexford assumed operations with little disruption. Most of the original staff stayed on, their positions secured by contract. Guests continued to visit. The buildings remained familiar, but the energy inside them was new, lighter, somehow. We renamed the Merrimack location the Elmstead, honoring the grove of trees that framed the rear terrace. Jonah still ran maintenance. Nadia still managed the front desk. When I visited, they hugged me like I was family. Because I was. Martin Leclerc kept his promise. He protected the culture we'd built. He honored the people. Not just with paychecks, but with purpose. I didn't take a formal title at Wexford. Instead, I served in an advisory role, negotiating lease terms, consulting on operations, ensuring continuity. I liked working behind the scenes. I always had. And I kept the land. The leases were structured to support long-term stewardship, not short-term profits. I wanted these places to outlive us all. One evening, as I reviewed reports on my back porch, my phone buzzed with a message from my father. "Dinner Friday? The kids want to see you." I replied, "Wouldn't miss it." We'd fallen into a rhythm. Monthly dinners. Conversations that avoided the past but honored the present. He had retired fully after Eloise stepped down. The remaining Danner and Brightwell properties stayed in operation, but they were quieter now. Reduced footprint. Fewer headlines. Eloise never returned to the board. E&M Horizon filed for bankruptcy 6 months after our confrontation. Most of her investors pulled out once they saw the full picture. She tried to pivot to a consultancy, but it lacked teeth. The trust was gone. We hadn't spoken in over a year. And yet, I thought about her more than I wanted to admit. Not out of resentment, but out of reflection. We'd grown up on the same foundation. One of us saw it as a springboard. The other saw it as roots. I sometimes wondered if she ever regretted what happened. If she felt the weight of it. But I never reached out. Some distances are safer kept. One autumn afternoon, I returned to Kittery, the place where it all began. The old inn still stood at the edge of the harbor. It had been converted into a heritage museum and community space. On the wall inside was a framed black and white photo of my grandfather handing the keys to my father. The plaque read, "Danner Inn, 1961. A beginning built by hand." I stood there for a long time, remembering. My father had built it alone, nights, weekends, every spare dollar poured into that crooked building with its drafty windows and peeling paint. And when he finally opened the doors, he told me something I never forgot. "People don't come back because the mattress is soft or the coffee's hot," he said. "They come back because they feel something. Something real." That's what Eloise had missed. That's what I'd fought for. I stepped outside and looked at the harbor, waves brushing against the dock. The world moved forward, always. Buildings changed. Names changed. But the land remained. Solid. Quiet. Unshaken. I returned home that evening and opened my notebook. I wrote a letter, not to send, just to write. "Dear Eloise, you were right about one thing. The company needed to evolve. But you were wrong about what to leave behind. People. Principles. Purpose. They're not relics. They're roots. And roots, if nurtured, grow stronger than ambition." I closed the notebook. I didn't need to publish anything. I didn't need a stage. I had what mattered: peace, clarity, and a legacy that still stood on its foundation. It was raining the night I received the letter. Not an email, not a text. A proper, handwritten letter in a navy blue envelope with a return address in Rhode Island. I almost didn't recognize the handwriting. I hadn't seen it in more than a year. It was from Eloise. I held the envelope a moment longer than I should have, the paper damp at the edges from the weather. Part of me wanted to toss it in a drawer and leave it unopened, like so many things between us. But I didn't. Inside were 2 pages. Neat cursive. Not dramatic. Just thoughtful. She didn't apologize outright, but she didn't have to. "I thought I was building something bold," she wrote. "But I was borrowing strength from something I never truly understood. I was trying to win a race you were never running." She asked about our father. About the properties. She didn't mention Horizon by name, but it lingered in the spaces between her sentences. She closed with, "I hope you're still doing what you love. I hope those buildings still breathe the way you always made them breathe." I folded the letter and put it in the drawer beside the brass key from Kittery, the same key I used to polish as a kid, the one my grandfather carried in his pocket for years. The next morning, I visited the Elmstead. I walked the corridors, spoke with Jonah about a plumbing issue in the lower-level suites, helped Nadia adjust the front desk shifts before the long weekend. It was normal. Quiet. Honest. At one point, I stood near the fireplace in the guest lounge, watching a couple read brochures for hiking trails in the White Mountains. They looked relaxed. Comfortable. They didn't know the names behind the lease agreements. They didn't need to. They were here because they felt safe. Seen. Settled. That was enough for me. Later that week, Martin and I met for coffee. He handed me a quarterly report, revenue up another 12%, employee satisfaction at a record high, all 3 locations booked solid through winter. You ever think about scaling this? He asked. No, I said. Growth isn't the goal. Integrity is. He smiled. That's why it works. We clinked cups and parted ways. That night, I returned home, sat on my back porch, and watched fog roll in across the harbor. The air was crisp. The kind of cold that clarified your lungs. I pulled out the letter again and read it slowly. Then I put it back in the drawer and closed it gently. Weeks passed. Life, as always, moved on. The properties remained steady, just like the land beneath them. I taught my team to watch the foundation, not the furniture. I had no interest in titles or statues or being remembered for anything flashy. I wanted to be remembered for doing it right. And maybe, someday, someone would sit in a quiet room in Kittery or Brattleboro or Merrimack, sip their morning coffee, and wonder who built the place they felt at peace in. They wouldn't know my name. But they'd feel the weight I'd carried. And, more importantly, the weight I let go. Not all stories need to end with applause. Some just need to end right. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.